Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Efrat Shokef, and you are in, it's escaping
In
me right
Israel, in Israel.
now. Israel. Okay. I knew that 5 minutes ago, just so it went blank. And you're in Israel. And you're going to share your near-death experience with us today.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Peggy, for having me.
Oh, thank
Your
you for
story is
coming.
inspiring, so I'm very happy to see where it leads us, this magic conversation.
I like to say to my guests, start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
So my story, it's always interesting where we pick our moment, but I think, uh, like in my book, The Promise We Made, Through Universal Soul Promises We Made to Our Children, where I share the story and the teachings it brought to me as a parent. Um, my story starts 5 days before my near-death experience. Um, I was a young mom. I was not working a lot. I was mostly at home. My twins turned 13 months, and my toddler, my first, was a little over 3. And 5 days before that sacred moment, I held a circle of moms in our small house then, inviting the moms of the community with their babies, my daughter's friends, and in a way to celebrate a long, challenging, I thought, a year of being a mom to 3 and the twins, um, sleepless nights, and all of that. In that circle, I invited the moms to each share what motherhood means for her. I'm sharing this bit of information because this is my journey, the meaning of motherhood, the essence of motherhood, as will unfold from my NDE and my experience. When it was my turn to share, I was last as a host. I I couldn't say a word. I had planned to thank the moms of the community and everything, and nothing. Could not say a word. And all I could whisper in Hebrew, obviously, not in English, I want to be their mom. And I choked on these words. And a friend of mine sitting next to me was like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" It's like not typical for me not to have something to say or
You
share.
just finished a PhD program, right?
Yeah, it was a few years after my PhD and after my postdoctoral studies. And I was in that phase of contemplating saying yes to an academic position in the university here, in one of the universities here, or going into advising or working as a group facilitator. I was doing a lot of things, but
And
in a way, I wasn't settled.
what was your background in? Your educational background?
Organizational and social psychology.
Okay.
I specialized in multicultural teams, group facilitation, worked in multinational organizations. That's where I did my PhD. Um, Corporate stuff.
Okay.
In a
So
way,
sociology,
no, psychology.
psychology. Okay.
Psychology. Yeah, I came from a background of psychology.
Okay.
But I was not working a lot. I was just teaching a few hours a week at that time because I was home with the twins. Um, 5 days later, I was on my way to that one morning a week. I was teaching in an academic school, and brought my toddler to nursed my twins in the morning, brought my toddler to her daycare, and and set to drive to the university. If and that's All I remember is a
So
long
you were
wait.
alone in your car.
I was alone in the car. Yeah, thank God I was alone in the car. The twins were home with my mom, and my husband was also home. And I left the village. We live in small villages. So the daycare was in a small village, and I left the small village into a country road, I guess, that would be considered in the US. And about 500 meters um, after I turned left, I felt a sense of a boom. I did not see the other car. coming towards me, losing control and fixing to the left into me. I did not see the crash. I did not experience any of it. All the memory that I have is a sense of a boom, no visual memory of what happened. And as you know from your near-death experiences as well, I was immediately out of my body, not going through the stages immediately in the spaces of source, of love, of what we sometimes refer to as heaven. My first recollections were of enveloping luminosity. Nothing mattered. It was all about it was all soft, deeply, deeply soft, calm. It was quiet, but not in the quiet sense of our human experience, but quiet in a way of a richness. It wasn't a void. It was very rich in its stillness, in its calmness.
You were calm?
I was calm and I was enveloped by calmness.
Okay.
And in that quiet, I remember a sound of a very, very delicate, far away music, like bells or like a delicate, far away music of a harp. My daughter plays a harp, so that's my association to what we experience here. And in a slow process and a very quick process, I was having love bubble into my cells, my energetic cells, because obviously it wasn't my physical cells. But I talk to you about it, and every time I share this story, I feel that love within my body. A sense of being accepted as I am, loved as I am, perfect as I am. There's no faults. There's nothing wrong. And that sense of love was bubbling into me. So it was around me, within me, and reminding me that that's what I am as well, until I was kind of becoming one with it, still with a separate identity, but becoming part of it. As that experience unfolded, I noticed I was starting to float forward, and I wasn't floating alone. I was floating with other beings around me, not close, but in a distance, but close enough that I would see them and experience our shared floating.
What did they look like?
Most of them had a human form, all colors, all genders, variety, ages. Some of them had a more longer, luminous sense integrated with that human form, but it was still human form. And in retrospect, I understand that these were fellow humans ending their life and continuing on.
Were they in clothing?
As if in closing, yeah. And so we were floating forward. I was just embracing that love. I was in just happy, nothing mattered. There were no thoughts about my human life or where I am or what is going on. I was just in the very, very second, not even in the moment. And then at some point, other beings came from the opposite side. Sometimes it was one, sometimes it was a group of 3, 4 varieties, and they would meet the beings that were floating forward with me. It was the most beautiful scenes of love. All of the meetings were it was pure joy of energetic knowing of each other. Some of those beings that came forward to meet the ones floating forward with me were it was a human look. Others look like very, very long, luminous beings. There is one orb of light that I really recall that pulled my attention just as an orb coming to embrace. And a few other figures showing that many of us come from many different places, and we're not just humans. So this was happening around me, and another meeting and another meeting, and at some point I noticed that they were meeting and embracing and floating forward, and I was unable to float forward any longer. It didn't bother me. It wasn't an issue. I wasn't thinking what was going on. I was just in that, again, it's the second of it, that each second of just enjoying the beauty. It's so beautiful. It's so bright. It's a nourishing brightness that with our human eyes that would dazzle us, but it was just, I don't know how long I was there. At some point, I sensed a figure coming towards me, and I felt it didn't really look like my grandfather, but it did look like my grandfather. It felt to me like my grandfather, and he was floating forward towards me. And that was a very heartwarming embrace where it's like a telepathic talk. We didn't talk with words. There were no sounds, or just that inner knowing that everything is well, that we're so happy to see each other. At times, and I share about this also in my book, and at times I wonder, or I know that, and ask, was it my grandfather, or was it my high luminous guidance taking the form of my grandfather so that I would feel comfortable in that meeting, in that embrace? I wonder, I know, I'm not even sure how to, it's like it lives within me as both, but it is one, because I've met that frequency since on the journey this experience took me to. It was in my
Was he
human life.
not as visible as the other people? Like he was more of a frequency?
It was more of a frequency, but a frequency taking form.
Okay.
But when even a frequency that takes a very clear form, we learn when we travel and journey into other dimensions, we learn to recognize their frequency because they can change form to make
Wait
us
a minute.
comfortable.
I'm not familiar with journeying to another dimension or whatever you just said. So
Okay. Why don't I'll share
go back
about
to
it. I'll
that.
come back to it. Yes, I'll
Okay.
come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's an interesting
Because you just
experience.
got like, I like to picture things as we go. And I'm like, I'm not picturing, what are you talking about? So we'll leave that later.
Yeah. I'll come back to that later. My grandfather invited me. The next step of my journey within my near-death experience was being invited to stand over a balcony. White, shimmering, beautiful balcony. And we were standing at the edge, and I was invited to see a lot of human interactions. I don't know if the balcony was floating above, or if the images were floating below us, or was it even just maybe it wasn't a real situation, it was a screen I was seeing stuff on. I have no idea. I just know that I was invited to observe many situations, a lot related to children and how we raise them, but not only. A lot of beautiful interaction, the beauty that being human allows us, that in this experience, and also a lot of sad experiences showing the type of choices we make as humans. And that this was going on and going on and going on.
Can you be
and
specific? I mean, what?
I can't be so specific of the examples, but what I can share about it, that it's a very expanded consciousness experience of viewing, because you view, if there are let's say two parents and a child in a situation, you view it from each of their eyes, you view it from above, you view it through their emotions, you see the thoughts or sense the thoughts, you see the energy, you see the soul journey, their soul contract. It's like each image is a very rich image. I recently tried to explain it to someone that has not had any experiences like that, and I said, it's like if you film a movie and you film a scene, then you have at least in 4 or 5 cameras from different angles. So each camera is taking another, is picking up on a different piece of that same scene. But then behind those cameras, there is also that the 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 human standing there. And although he gets or she gets very clear directions to pick specific detail within, it's also them and their view and their lens of how they see what's important, their art. So it becomes a multidimensional creation of that scene. And we have the actors that have their interpretation of what the director wants. So it was that kind of viewing, but in a from above, from a higher perspective of knowing, of an invitation, of perceiving our human journey. This was going on for, it felt like days. There was so much, and I wasn't even integrating what I was seeing. I was just absorbing, seeing something like, in a sense, I think it was making me expand in my perception of what's going on. Just absorbing, no interpretation, no explanations at all, just sees this, notice that. And then at some point, my grandfather said, "It's not your time." It was very clear that I need to return to my physical body now. And as he was saying that, I wasn't even given a chance to stay in this beautiful place. I was floating. I was already departing with loving eyes and floating back into my fatally injured body. As that happened, I heard that there was a man that did not see the crash happen, but stopped a few minutes, I guess, later, and he was communicating with the paramedics, and they told him to talk to me, and he was like, "Were there any kids in the car? Was there anyone in your car with you?" It was like repeating that question, and I wasn't able to answer. I was like, I was there or not there. He saw that I had a car seat in the back seat and 2 bases of click connects. So he was afraid that one of the click connects has departed and they need to look for a baby somewhere.
Okay.
And at some point, and I don't understand it myself, I was just in a very clear, I managed to talk to him and I said, "No, there were no babies in the car. My name is, I live, it was 10 minutes from our house in this village. My husband's name is, this is our phone number. Please call my husband and tell him to come over." And then I was out of my body again. But this time I wasn't in the spaces of love. I was floating above, having more kind of an out-of-body experiences. These were retrospect understanding. I wasn't understanding what was going on at the time.
You mean like
and
you
then
were
I saw
watching
the
the
fire.
scene below at that point?
Yeah, I was watching the scene below, the fire at the front of my car, the paramedics taking me out, coming in and going, like seeing all kinds of pieces from that scene. And then I was taken with a helicopter to the hospital. I wouldn't have made it otherwise. So this is my near-death experience story.
What were your injuries?
A lot of broken bones from my left toe to my arm and leg and back, and a lot of internal organs that were wounded. As a process, I had a colostomy open, and then it was closed. I had a lot of operations. Yeah, all over,
Okay.
multiple injuries. These type of injuries, they don't leave you any room to turn back into your old life. You need to start something new. You need to begin something new, because it's not going to be a healed arm and you can do whatever you do. It was a complete physical reorganization, together with the invitation that came from the near-death experience of showing up to who I am, to what I came here to do, to this spiritual essence, to all of us, each and every one of us being love, and embracing that invitation as part of it.
How was that incorporated in your NDE? Was these knowings, downloads, or was this afterwards you come to feel that, or?
No, the feeling that I was love and that everyone that I was viewing, everything that I was seeing during my NDE, everything was love, the plants, the earth, the clouds, the houses, the matter, and the humans within it, and the four-legged and the winged ones. Everything was love. That was instilled within me during my NDE. I came back not knowing what I experienced, not having a name for it because I wasn't familiar with such experiences before that. But just knowing that everything around me is love. So the dog, as I was in the ICU for a while, and then they, under anesthesia, and they started waking me up, and their reflection was, "You were just okay with everything. You were just smiling." And my understanding, again, it's a lot of understanding in retrospect, that I was smiling because I saw the love within them. And I knew that regardless of whether having a colostomy open or not, and at that point they didn't know if I would walk, if they would be able to close it, how much I would heal. They consider me a miracle in how I am today. But I knew that regardless of everything, I was love. And now, it wasn't knowing that I could articulate in words as I can, as we speak and now, but it was deep knowing that was just informing every action, everything around me during my healing process. But only then, as it turned into thoughts, and I could express it, even just to myself, I started asking, wait, I am love in a more aware and conscious way. And I'm a spirit on a journey. So that means my husband is love and he's spirit on a journey. That means my daughters are souls on a journey, and my parents as well. And it was like, oh, I can't believe this. I thought, it was just that realization falling down that all of us are really, that was, I needed to interpret that into my life and to understand that if my daughters are on a journey, that the way I show up as a parent needs to take that piece of my daughters being on a soul journey into consideration in how I parent. If my parents are on a journey, and as a soul, my daughters chose me, that means I chose my parents. What did that mean about our relationship?
How old were you in your accident?
I was 35, a little over 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how was it when you started to try to explain what happened, or that you saw grandpa, or any of that?
It took me a long time to start sharing, and I picked those people I shared very carefully.
Right.
Very
Because you have this
carefully.
degree in psychology. Let's not be too cuckoo, right?
Some of my colleagues, amazing professors, successful professors in various universities around the world, still think I lost it completely.
Oh.
And I respect that, because that's how their line of thought, and I don't know what their journey is about. Sometimes our journey needs to go through those spiritual aspects, and for a lot of us, the most spiritual thing is to be very grounded and do what we are here to do. I think technology is an interesting example about that. When you use your abilities to contribute to advances in technology that are contributing humanity, not the ones that are exploding it, that are contributing to humanity, you may be very grounded and not do meditations and not fly around and be spiritual, but you are spiritual because you are walking the essence that you came here to walk. So I don't judge those people that think I lost it, but a lot of people around me couldn't accept my story, my experience, and the changes within me, because I was a direct person before that. As I embraced my understanding, I became even more direct. I say my truth. I express it. I experience things in a higher perspective. It's not easy. It's not acceptable. Till today, I have friends and family that barely know of my story, and hopefully like me as who I am and as who I become and how I act around them. Sharing the story was not easy, and it wasn't easy both because I didn't have the language and I came from a very rational academic environment. And there is a piece about near-death experiences, and I hear about this from a lot of people, not just near-death experience, a lot of STEs, spiritual transformative experiences, that we don't have the words for them. We don't have the language to express even to ourselves what happened.
Because it seems like at some point in history, it was all banned and taboo and don't talk about it, or you'll be mentally ill or, shunned from everyone. And it was never talked about. So we don't have the language or understanding.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We don't have, unless you had someone like a parent or someone that was more aware, more conscious of their journey. And I do know people that were blessed with someone around them. I had I live in a spiritual community, and a lot of people were aware of those stories. But then when it happened to one of them, they would they didn't want to know, or they wanted to know only about the beauty of the experience and hear nothing about the challenges of integrating it
Right.
to who I am. And there is always a process of integration, of asking questions, of asking ourselves, is my experience real? And questioning everything as it transpires, but it is so powerful, as you know yourself, that it's just a knowing. We know, it's not a belief anymore. It's not we think that, it's just a knowing that this and this and this happens, and this and this and this is a meaning for me.
When you
But
when
it
you
takes
say
time.
when you say you come from academic background, are you saying like your parents, your family was like not spiritual, religious, or any way, just like academics, and that was it? Or
Yeah. My parents are both academics. My father is a professor in the university. My husband isn't a professor in the university in a very rational field. His father was a professor in the university. His brother. It's like everyone around us, our circle, our closest circle, or friends, everyone. That's the environment, and a very non-religious, secular space. So I had a lot of spiritual friends because that always talked to me. I was always intuitive. I always had that deep connection, but I never nurtured it until I had the car crash and the NDE. And it was very clear that I was more afraid of not exploring it than.
I
Uh,
kind of suspected that background when you told your NDE because, and I've noticed that with NDEers, if they didn't have much spiritual religion or anything in their background, they see it as, what you saw, and, you saw these other spirits and they're going forward. And whereas me, my grandma always drug me to church and things. So when I'm in the bright white light and I see faint outline, I think, see one sitting up front and center, my background says that has to be God. And so I'm
mm,
addressing God. Whereas someone that doesn't have that background, there could be this orb of light where I would probably say, oh, there's God, and address them and went on with my experience as this is God and any communication. And, that's what, and yours come from grandpa. You believe this is your grandpa? I'm sure it was. But I just find it seems like we are met as we are, like
yeah.
who we are and what background we have and what we assign to what we see because it's confusing. This is all new. So what do we have to refer to as what is this? And you
What's
didn't
really
have any of
beautiful
that.
about it,
Pardon
yeah,
me?
I didn't have that background, but I think what's beautiful about it that you come from a Christian background and you had your experience and you interpreted things and you saw things in the way that you could relate to them, so it would be as comfortable as possible. And I came with my background, and and saw things the way I did. And people from all over the world, from all kinds of religions, and being raised with all kinds of perceptions, have those experiences, and we still have so much in common in within our experiences. So it's like a way of interpreting things, just like it helps us interpret and guide ourselves in our human lives. But basically, it returns to the fact that we're all love and we're all equal, and it's that piece of religion is for our here and now, because that's a structure that we need or don't need, but we have. So
And I think I heard you say some would call heaven, like to describe where you were, some would call this heaven. And I thought, okay, she's not calling it heaven. So I'm seeing where you're at, I think, but I had to ask to be sure. Um,
yeah, I don't know, I just in my associations, as you say heaven, there must be hell. And I usually avoid using this term heaven, because
it's
hell
interesting.
is not something I feel, and to my knowing, actually exists. It
So
is
it's like
something
if I don't believe in heaven, there can't be hell, right?
maybe, framing it, yeah, or the way, we use, what terms do we use in talking to others about it. So yeah, I call it a space. I refer to it as a space of
Okay.
luminosity, a space of love, sometimes a space of source. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So how does your experience and how people are treating you due to your experience, how did you process all this into, what this was real and where to put it? What was this? Who were these people? What does this mean? How did you come to find where you have this acceptance of it?
So I was injured, lying in bed, at first in the hospital, dependent for anything, diapered, being fed into my veins. It was, and then continuing my recovery at home and unable to care for my daughters. My one motivation to heal, nothing else mattered. And I had hours of rest because I was unable to do anything. And what happened during this rest was that as soon as I closed my eyes, I wouldn't fall asleep. I would be back in the luminous fields of love. And I was returning again and again and again to what I saw and to my experience. And it was relaxing, it was calming. I would use that in medical procedures to desensitize myself instead of receiving all kinds of painkillers, because I was really making sure I wouldn't get too much. I was anyway getting too much. So I was like trying to reduce the amounts. And as that evolved, messages started coming down. Guidance. At first in writing, I would write, and I wasn't writing a lot because I was barely able to hold a pen. I was so weak, but I would write a few sentences. I would write for myself, but I would notice that the words coming were not mine. And I started to explore where these words were coming from. I in my walk also today, we're 14 years forward. I believe we need to know where the messages we're receiving coming. It's amazing that they're loving and everything, but we need to ask. This is a really important question.
Yes.
That
Well, who
where,
is that, right?
yeah, who is that? And are you my highest guidance? There's
Mhm.
so many beings trying to be very helpful, but if they're not, it's like my guidance can be the most amazing guidance for me. But if they're not your guidance, and they would start guiding you, they may give you misinformation. And it's really important that we're aligned and we work only with our guidance. That's who we listen to. So many people like channeling and just getting information from everywhere, wherever, whatever information they get. And sometimes that's low frequencies that are giving them the information. That's not safe.
And
So I
from a
was
psychologically, background, am I healthy hearing voices? I mean, I'm sure that would come across your mind. Am I healthy because I'm hearing voices?
um, at the time I was receiving the messages, and it was, I wasn't hearing voices. I was receiving the messages in writing,
Okay.
but I was already open to explore.
Okay.
I was open to explore. And because soon after that, I did started to hear the guidance, also not in writing. And I knew I recognized the frequency. I knew what I was hearing, who I was hearing. I would always ask again and again, again, is that? And I would get confirmation, because energetic laws say that if it's not the being that you think it is, that being has to go away. And the right one, your own guidance, has to show up. And so I was getting the messages, and things started to weave to what it is, what happened to me. Books on NDE started showing up. And I suddenly knew, okay, I said, so this is what I experienced. And I did not experience a tunnel because it was a car crash and it was a fast death. And I just started learning about it. And I was writing with two different colors in my notebook. There were my thoughts and what the messages that I received. I would like exchange the color of pen to make sure. And writing to myself, oh, I'm not sure, is this something that happened to me, or this is something I've read about? And I know very clearly what happened to me and what I understood later. So I was like working with it very analytically, trying to figure things out. It was my analytical mind, because that's the mind I had before, until at some point it shifted to my heart. Because my mind was not, our mind doesn't have the tools to articulate those types of experience. So I was starting to work from my heart. And it was a long process. It was a few years, while I was trying to also find ways to become my daughter's mom, find those pieces where I can be active, figure out why they chose me if I'm not able to care for them. And I really wanted to share that experience with love with them. Not as my story, but as an experience. And what I learned along the way was that every moment, I call them soul moments, but that's my way of expressing it to myself. Every moment that I was true to my essence, true to who I became, who I returned to be, because that's who we are in essence, even in little details of life, I felt closer to that experience of love, but not by being in another dimension of luminous love, but within my body. It was, feeling heaven on earth. And here I am using the term heaven, feeling heaven on earth when I'm precise. And it's not about big decision. I share in my book about like the example of taking that extra bite. You have more food on your plate, but you've eaten enough. And I was very sensitive to it because of my internal organs and everything that happened in the car crash. If I take that extra bite, I'm not precise. But if I leave it on the plate, I am precise. So I'm talking about very, very little details. I often tell parents, like, you feel your phone beeping, but now you're with your child. So the precise thing to do would be to ignore that beep of a text message coming in and look later. But you might feel within you that this is an important text that you do need to get up to. And it indeed is. So that was the precise for that second. So there's no like right or wrong. But as I was noticing those moments, I realized there's a way, and the way for me to share that love with my daughters was not about the story indeed, but was about creating the conditions that they need so that they could walk life precise to their truth, aligned with their truth. And kids know the truth. They know their inner truth. They're connected. It's us adults that try to help them adjust to human life. But what we're actually doing is distancing them from who they are. But when a child walks aligned, they don't need a car crash and a near-death experience to recall their essence. They're walking their truth. And that led me to my whole journey of a quest to the essence of motherhood, to working with children, to learning shamanic practices of working with children, to writing my book, and everything that I share on my website and everything,
Now,
because
what is shamanic practices?
shamanism, let's call it modern shamanism, because it's not the indigenous shamanic practices. There is a translation or adaptation of many shamanic practices and stories coming from different parts of the world into healing practices, healing modalities that we can use in our modern Western lives. But the idea in general is it's a process. It's very connected to Earth, to the beings of Earth. And it's a set of tools, and I'm intentionally referring it to not to the ideology and the theory and it's a way of life, but in my work with children, it's a set of tools that allow us to become more whole. Whole means healthy in our physical, healthy in our luminous field, our energy whole, our energy flowing, being able to walk our essence. If we go back to the questions you asked earlier about journeying, so one of the I think a practice that people are more familiar with about shamanism is shamanic journeying. Within shamanic journeying, I often, when I try to explain it, it's like an advanced form of guided meditation, which people are more familiar with, and we imagine, but it's more, imagination is so much more than just the fruit of our mind. We imagine a scene and we start traveling into other dimensions. Now children, I found that in my healing, I'll return to children in a second. In my healing, I just noticed that I was traveling to other dimensions as part of my exploration of those fields of luminous love that I experienced in my NDE. I was returning to them again and again. But then from there, doors to other spaces opened up as well. And in shamanic journeying, there's a very clear map. It's like there's a middle world, the energy of our human earthly space, and then there's an underworld, and there's an upper world, and there is a terminology and a cosmology of where do you go within the map for different types of healing, what types of beings live within each of those spaces, and who do you meet. What we know today is that veils are so open between dimensions and worlds that people who journey, they go to the underworld and jump into the upper world and again, and you can so many pieces of information can weave in with a specific intention of healing or exploration that you come into the journey. But and children journey naturally.
Is this astral travel?
Yeah, you can call it also astral travel. Yes, it's not exactly the same thing, but it is very similar. Yes.
Was you interested in this before your NDE?
No.
Is this something after you started studying NDEs that you come across and it fit for
Something
you?
that, yeah, as I was integrating my NDE, I noticed that I was journeying. I noticed that I was going to other dimensions. I noticed that I was mediating healing to others. And I looked for a system of thought and tools that I could study. And that's what led me to studying modern integrative shamanism.
And this felt like coming from your heart, living from your heart as you talk.
Oh, yes. It was a precise moment, a soul moment of knowing, yes, this is something I need to explore and learn. And it indeed gave me the language that I was missing and the tools. And it's a very grounded perspective, which was important for me because often around NDEs, people are interested about the afterlife, which is indeed fascinating. But I think that to my experience, the deep invitation is to recall who we are and how we wanted to live here within our journey. So the shamanic practices and the shamanic way of seeing things for me was a very grounded perspective, connected to earth, pulling me down, allowing me to manifest here, not just, meditating and leaving my body and disconnecting. No, it was finding things here, in the here and now.
It sounds to me, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe because and we can only wonder, I suppose, that your NDE, you were out of your body immediately in this other realm, this other dimension, and experienced what you did. And then when you come back to the accident and you were out of body, looking over the scene, that, and then in your healing, dealing with pain in the hospital, you would return to that first realm as a way of, not needing medication, as of coping and escape from the physical. And then you find this and it fits because that's where your heart is wanting to reach that realm again.
Yeah.
And so that's your comfort zone.
It's my comfort zone, but within the process, I'm learning that I can have that comfort zone
Hmm.
here within my physical. I don't need to go to other dimensions in order to have that experience. That if I'm precise to who I am in my essence, I experience it here.
So when you recall
That
that,
brings
do
it.
you
That brings it
recall,
down.
do you recall where you were to get into that place and then to explore other places?
It wasn't recalling. I was just
Okay.
closing my eyes and I was there.
Okay.
There wasn't any effort. And as I
Okay.
was becoming very comfortable in those spaces, I would venture, a little to the right, a little to the left, saying yes to seeing more, to exploring, to deepening my own experience of that sense of love.
Okay. I always tell the audience to have different views on guests. And then when I'm interviewed about near-death experiences as a whole, when people have interviewed, and they'll say, "What's one thing you've concluded?" And I say, listen to the near-death experience and then listen to what they then made of it, how they integrated it. Because some people that have a religious experience, and maybe not even a religious background, they may have been atheists and then they have a religious experience, and then where they take it. Or some will start looking into new age things, and someone says, well, you're a medium. So that's where they take it. Well, I'm now a medium. And then, you've found this that works for you. And then, how I interpret and it's like we need a place to put it. We all have all had this experience that are similar, but when we come back, we internalize and say, okay, this was real. So where do I fit it in with my life? And we fit it in, I think, where it's comfortable for us. It might be
Yeah.
someone that said, okay, this is what you need to do with it, or we decide this is what we need to do with it. But it seems like we all need that place to land afterwards when we're processing it of how do I fit this into, because we're on earth. We're not in that realm. We're on earth and we got to make sense of it and how what feels comfortable for us. So there's the experience and then there's how we interpret the experience, I think.
Yeah, I think there is the experience. There is how we interpret the experience. I think most of us come with also with a knowing that the experience was not only for us, that we are to do something about it. And I think that it's beautiful that we share it in ways that are in many ways that are comfortable to who we are, because as humanity, there are all kinds of communities and there are all kinds of people, and there are so many ways to walk our path. So the fact that there are so many and there's so many people experiencing near-death experience and spiritually transformative experience, and I think it's like more and more people are receiving that direct invitation to recall who they are and to show up as who they wanted to show up. But that means different things for different people, because we need to serve different communities. You can't serve the whole world. I can't serve the
Right.
whole world. You serve the people that relate to the way you interpret your story and how you
Yes.
bring it to others. I serve in my very small niche, and so do others. And I find that as a blessing that we can um, enrich our understanding and how we walk based on various modalities and thought systems that are available to us, and then interpret it and bring it in very creative ways. But we all become co-creators, because we all walk with that knowing or channel that knowing as or mediate energy or help us recall that energy in our ways. And that's part of the richness of humanity. It's part of the beauty of living on Earth, to my experience. So,
Yeah. Because they all come down to this is a soul. Okay, we know our mind that, we get our education and we take care of our children and we know these all things, obey the laws but yet when you've had an NDE, now you know your soul. And it's
yeah.
like, how do I bring this out in my life now that I have this knowledge of knowing my true self, and how do I share it? Because it feels, like you say, it feels like we're meant to share it in some way. And when I first got in the NDE community about 10 years ago, I assumed that everybody thought this was, a God experience like I did. I was naive. And then I start getting told, don't say God, don't say Jesus. We don't want Christians in leadership of this NDE community. I'm like, what? Like they gave me an ultimatum. You got a choice to make. Your Christian values
Oh.
or this. And I'm like, well, see
But
ya.
this is wow, but this is your interpretation, and it
Yeah.
is just as right interpretation as mine, or as a Muslim experience it as a Muhammad coming down, or Moses for it's like um, um, we use the terminology that we have, and it's actually, I think it's a blessing, and it's so helpful to have a terminology.
Yeah. And
It
now
makes the
the pendulum has
integration so
swung to
faster.
where the pendulum has swung is where people are saying, only have Christian guests on your show. Like, no, I'm not going to do that either. I was, subjected to this bullying and um, prejudice and being outcast because of my faith. I don't want to do that to anybody else. I'm not going to put those standards. So some are now have strictly Christian NDEs, and they make sure that it's only Christian, it fits the biblical standards and all this, or they won't have a guest on. I'm like, well, I don't agree to that either. So it's trying to find this happy medium. And then, but yet when you do that, you're going to offend people, or you're going to offend the people no matter what you do, But there's some who's like, well, I don't like this NDE because it's not Christian. Well, I don't like this NDE because it's too Christian. So you're always going to have people trying to bring their stuff in and just not, okay, well, just listen to the NDE and understand that this is also a human being living on earth trying to make sense of their experience. And what tools do we have to us? And some is going to be the Bible route, and some is going to be stay clear away from the Bible route, and everything in between. And also the NDE community in the beginning, they were just wanting people that had at least a master's degree to share their story, because they felt people would believe them, that they would trust teachers and doctors and nurses and these professions. They only wanted NDErs that had these professions. And I thought, well, that's not fair either. So I started my channel I want the little guy nobody ever heard of, not this doctor over here that everybody hears every day and was on Oprah and all these things. You've heard that 100 times. Give me this guy over here that says, I've never shared my story before. Give me that guy. And so yeah, it's just it's interesting. And it's always interesting too, I know for everybody across the board, to someone has a psychiatry background to talk about having this experience, because my background is in counseling and corrections investigations, child abuse investigations, those kind of things. But so I just know enough, because I don't have no PhD. I just know enough to know this will get you kicked out of kicked out of getting a job. Yeah. And so I was pretty much done with that career before I started speaking up, because I wouldn't have. Because you are like, oh, did you see her on this talking crazy? Even though Dr. George Ritchie, way back when Dr. Raymond Moody wrote his book, it was one of the first he heard of was Dr. Ritchie. So that's how old, 50 years ago, that he heard of his story. And he was in the military, and they seen he had a medical background. So they were sending him back home to go to college, but they had to process him through this medical unit first. And he ended up getting pneumonia and died. He had this elaborate NDE, if we ever heard of NDE. And he later, years later, he was a medical doctor, but now he would become a psychiatrist. And he had to go before the psychiatry board, and they said, you've just come out about this near-death experience, and you're wanting to be a psychiatrist. And do you want to take that back? Or he's like, no, he stuck to it. And they said, because he stuck to it, they went ahead and passed him through. They could see he was legitimately, in his mind, telling the truth. And I thought, but yet, however, in 1986, when I had my second NDE to a bracing hospital, I wasn't about to tell my doctor what I just experienced. Never heard of it. I thought this never happened in the history of the world. Never heard of such a thing. And if I told him, they would take me up to the psych ward instead of finding out what was going on with me medically. But and still, for so long, like you tell people that, and you might as well say a UFO picked me up and took me to Mars. I mean, that's how people would respond. And so I always say we're not that crazy that we just start telling us right off the bat. I appreciate the people that do, that have that courage, though. So
Yeah.
for you to have this issue, there's people in your community that still like,
Yeah, it's first, thank you for having me, because I do my NDE is not a Christian NDE. But I respect that it's easier for us, for all of us, to absorb information that comes into language that is familiar to us. But I do hope that that if we're interested and we're open enough to understand that there are NDEs, that we're also open to understand that beyond those religious choices, we are all humans, and we are all equal, and we're all here on a journey, and we're here to make the most out of it. And yes, I didn't, it took me I learned at first, I felt sad for those people who couldn't hear the story or couldn't open up for to the ideas. I would, everything was so magical. I wanted everyone to embrace it. But today I look at it, and from perspective, I understand that we each have our journey. And as I shared earlier, you never know what's going on within a person. You never know what's their stories unless they share it with you, or unless you ask, what is your story? Who are you? What shaped you to be the human that you are? What makes you bring beauty into the world? And unless you ask those questions, we don't know. We walk among people and we think we know them really, really well, and we have no idea what they went through and what shaped them, and how connected they are to source, to God, to Jesus. Again, I don't think it matters how we name those different beings and different essences and energy. What matters is that we open our hearts to the love that they invite us to embrace. And I choose to respect others, or I do my best to respect that others have their own journey, and their journey does not have to be like my journey,
and if
because it's theirs.
we can wash away all that judgment and get all past all of
Yes.
that. What we're left with, I think, I don't know why I'm picturing this, washing this rag and it coming out clean, and now look at it. What do we have? What are we left with is, who are those voices? Who are those people that are telling us it's not your time or it is your time? Because I was told it was my time. The answer was no, and I begged. And then when we come back and we recognize, I think that maybe have been in the back of our minds before, our subconscious, but now it's forward, like our soul. We can hear our soul now because that's all we heard in that space. We didn't have this human brain. We were out of our body. So we were out of our brain. And so we're now in connection with this soul, and we can hear what it's thinking, but we also hear those people on the other side that was saying these things. We can still hear, go down that road. Somebody needs help, or whatever type of stuff that we hear. And, you get yours through writing. Mine just come out of the blue, out of nowhere. Where some people feel they need to get into this meditation and then it opens up and all that. And it's different for all of us. But then every person we know, if they're honest, will say, it's like we have this, some will say an evil voice or a good voice, or maybe it's just not, it's part of being human. We have this human brain, but then there's this chatter and there's these voices that come in and say things, and nobody wants to talk about that. And I think to me, that comes down, we wash away all take the religion out of it, the new age out of it, or the shaman, or, whatever we use to deal with it. And what it comes down to, who is this? Who is this
Exactly.
guiding this on the other side? Because we're all going to die someday for good. And this is the place where we're going to be at. Who wouldn't we want to know now if we can? Because we can't help but wonder who who's making these decisions? Like who told me no is, the answer is no, you're not going back. It is your time. Who decides when our time is? I mean, these to me are like the meat of the questions. Who is this on the other side that is bringing these people and welcoming them in that you experienced? And, there was a panel of people that I experienced, real faint outline, you know, who are they? And then when we come back and we're given this guidance on we're not over there. So how are they talking to us? How do we know who to listen to, who not to listen to? I mean, so many people say, a voice, in psychiatry, say a voice told me to hurt all these people. Okay, who are these voices? And how can we help people to recognize what's a bad voice and what's a good voice? And to me, that is the most useful thing we could come out from this.
And just imagine if you take everything you said now and we take that judgment out of kids' life and we guide children from an early age how to know what is a positive voice and what are voices that you just don't listen to, not just from energy, not just energetic voice, social voices, do's and don'ts that don't align with their essence, staying true to who they are. So it's like you talk about the vision, and I vision it with the little ones. All these wonderful children that don't judge and accept each and every other child as they are, unless we adults tell them something else. And if we could cultivate that innate knowing of kids, of being love, of knowing their truths, of knowing what is right and wrong, physically human, not just, and definitely, in my field of work, I help kids that see energies and they see colors and they see other beings and they communicate with them. And if we could provide that guidance, how different would our world look? Because we would be cultivating a beautiful essence that is true to every human instead of that huge confusion that leads us to so much trouble as humanity.
I remember at 10 years old, and my parents had got divorced, and my older four siblings, they were gone with their friends. My mom took off with my stepdad he was a truck driver. I was home alone a lot. And one day I was outside my house, walking down the street, across the street, and this old man right across our street, this little white house, says, "Come here, come here, come here." And we're standing on a sidewalk. "I see what goes on at your house, and it's not right." And I'm thinking, how does he know what goes on in my house? Yeah, is he looking through the window or what? And he's like, "I've been watching your house, and I've been watching what goes on, and it's not right. And you need to come in my house and have dinner with me and my wife." And a voice told me, if you go in that house, nobody will ever see you again. If I hadn't heard that voice, if I hadn't listened to that guidance, and then, so many other times in my life, as we all do, we have this voice that has saved us. Or girls later are kidnapped and, put in this box in this person's basement or whatever, chained up. And I watch these true story movies, and so many times that comes across in the movie where they have said, and then you hear the interviews where it really did happen, that something told them, do not get in that truck with him, and they did anyway. Something said this and that, or don't make him
We
mad
are
right
all
now.
guided. We're all guided. But we need to nurture that knowing in our children that they are guided and they can trust their own knowing. Because uh, uh, if they lose that trust, then yes, they would hear that guidance because the guidance would do everything possible to protect them. And some, it can be we can call them guardian angels, power animals. Again, it doesn't matter what language we use. We have that guidance following us and taking care of us, but we need to listen to it, and we need to trust that what we hear is true, and
And if we
follow
could,
it as you luckily did.
yeah, and if we could, teach kids that in some way, the spiritual aspect of it, not just, don't do this, don't do that. How many would not start drugs? I mean, we wouldn't have anybody drug addicted if they would not start to begin with. And I
Yeah.
remember at 16 walking one night through the fairgrounds, and I got over in this other field, and these teenage girls come up and they looked really cool and pretty. And they say, hey, they asked me if I want to do this certain drug. Like, no. And I knew enough, from hearing at school the dangers of that drug that I was like, oh, come on, it's fun. And like, why do they want me? I don't know these girls. Why do they want me taking that drug? What happens to me next once I take that drug? They're getting something out of, you don't just go away giving drugs, right? They've got something in mind. And, so many other kids are like, oh, okay, these are like cool girls. And, who knows? Human trafficking, I don't know. But it just
Even
seems.
even if it's just the exploration, that so many kids choose to go through today, if they have a very clear sense of their essence and they grow up not confused by social standards, then yes, they will want to have some of them, not all of them. Many of them would actually prefer to have just one or two good friends, but many would like to have, be part of the party and have a lot of friends or everything, but they will still have that inner guidance telling them, as part of me being part of the social group, this I do, and these are my boundaries. And when you grow up knowing that essence, as then you can trust it and you can discern what is yes and what is no. But so many kids would say yes to those girls, even if their intention is just to share the drug, to have like a bigger party, because they need to feel accepted. They think this is what they should do, instead of understanding and walking with that deep knowing that they're accepted by God, source, the universe. Again, it doesn't matter what we call it, they're accepted merely by being here in a human journey.
So how does this look? You work with kids now, correct? And
Yeah, so my work, I write most of it. My main focus is writing. I have my book, The Promise We Made, Three Universal Soul Promises We Made to Our Children. I have courses, a lot of free resources for parents of spiritually aware children. When I refer to spiritually aware children, all those children that have see energies, experience energies, know things, show us this wisdom that is clearly not age related, above their age or perspective. There are many characteristics to what we refer to today as a very broad term of spiritually aware children. So I have a lot of free resources on my website. And I also work individually with parents and children, guiding them, helping them sort things out. I prefer usually working through the parents, because as children choose their parents, they don't choose me. So I can offer their parents, and the parents can discern this tool that Efrat is offering us can work, this process can work, this process is not for us. So I think it's easier than working with children, but at times it comes out a lot that I do work with children. I guide children in shamanic journeying. I have a shamanic journeying group that I have here, a local group that we meet, a group that started, they were about 12 when they were young. The oldest one is over 18 now, and it's like we met weekly, and then with the moms, so it was the parents were involved. I think it's really important parents are involved and not just sending your kid to get this type of guidance. Rather, you want to make sure it fits your values, and to help the kids understand what they're experiencing energetically. And we continue doing that in holidays, and we don't meet weekly as we did at first, but we meet, and they work with the various energetic spiritual tools. They each pick the one that works for them. I give them a variety, and I encourage them to pick the ones that work for them. And it's amazing to see the woman they're becoming, all of this group, because they're so centered and knowing and very clear. And they're like this luminous beings within their community of friends saying, this is right, this is wrong, because they're centered, very grounded, beautiful teachers to me, because they're all my teachers. I'm learning from them, and based on what I experience with them and with my clients, I share with others in my website and the resources in the book, so that people around the world and people all over the world have those little ones that are luminous. They're luminous. And I think, when we see a baby, psychological theories tell us that they're cute so that we would physically take care of them. Okay. And that is true. That is true. And it's important. But
Yeah,
what
when you see a
else?
baby, oh, they're so cute. Yeah, you go
And you just
crazy.
you melt. But
Yeah.
another thing happens to us. They just came here and they're pure in their knowing, in their energy, in the love that they are. And it reminds us, it pushes buttons within us of that memory within ourselves. It activates our heart chakra. It tells us, "Oh, this is the truth." When we see babies, we know this is the truth. And that's an invitation for us as parents, as adults, as teachers, and as grandparents to show up, because every kid you reach out to, you make a difference.
Mm.
And often you reach out to just by being the luminous being that you are, because we can't guide another about something that we're not true about.
And what I think was so special, seeing babies in the store and little kids, is they're so open. They're not closed off. They're
Yeah.
waving hi. They're making eye contact, or they'll just start saying something to you. And I'm like, you're just drawn to them because adults aren't doing that. They're on a mission. They're there to get what they got to get done. Like, some in the line, will start conversations, but as kids, they're just like, who's going to make eye contact with me? Who can I say hi to? Who's going to, connect?
And I'm sure you always say hi back, right? Because they still remember. They still remember. But I always think how my life would have evolved differently if I was given the guidance that I needed as a young child and as a teen with spiritual experiences, not knowing what to do with them. I wouldn't close down. I wouldn't be afraid of myself. I would stay open in a guided way, in a fitting way to society, because we are to guide them out. Humanity works, but I would stay open. I wouldn't need a car crash and a near death experience to return to being who I am. So I'm happy about the process, because now I understand why it's important to guide kids and teens. But I also understand it's we can keep that sparkle. We can return to that wonder, and we can allow them to stay true to that.
When I had a lot of foster kids in and out, and the therapeutic agency was a group of child psychiatrists, and they started saying, "What are you doing with these kids that I didn't have any trouble with anybody? Everybody else was bailing the program because they had trouble with one kid, and I've got somebody coming out." And I was like, "What do you do with them when you have an issue?" Like, let me think. What do I do? I said, "Oh, well, I take whoever I'm having an issue with, that's having an issue. I take them out my bedroom and I shut the door and we sit down on the bed and we just have one-on-one talk."
Because you saw them. You saw them with the eyes of love. You saw below all those, behaviors, their coping mechanisms that they learned may work for them in other places, but they couldn't fool you. That's my guess. Because you came and you walk since childhood, because of your early near-death experience, you walk with that knowing of luminosity, of seeing another, of respecting another, of mutuality. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing it right, in our journey, and you could provide them to that safe space of remembering who they are,
Yeah,
and it's beautiful.
yeah, so I
They
never
were
thought about
blessed.
it. That didn't even think I would just come natural to do that. And I thought, well, I'm taking them out of the group because if you try to talk to them in front of the group, they're going to be their egos on the line, and you're
Yeah.
not going to get personal. You're not going to. And when they're taken away, and just like, where are we going? What's happening? And I invited them into my personal space. And I looked back later, I think that was an honor to them to be invited into my personal space and the door shut. And we're just sitting there like, what do you do when you spend the night with your friend? You sit on the bed and talk, and
Yeah.
it was just open up and what's going on. And then we get it taken care of and it's, on their way. I didn't think it was a big deal, but so hindsight, I thought, I think that was, and so I try to tell other people when they're having problems. I said, take him up to your bedroom and shut the door and just have a one-on-one. So,
Yeah, just accept them for a moment. And I think that's what a lot of children with their confused behaviors, that's what they cry out for. See me, accept me as who I am, not as you want me to be.
yeah.
Um, and often they don't know who they are either, because they lost their way. But and parents, teachers, I wish for every child to find that one adult that does know who they are as an adult, because the only way we can reflect back to those kids that are lost, that are reaching out to us, who they are, is if we stand within our luminosity, with a very clear. And it doesn't matter if this is a religious luminosity, because that's how we interpret it, one religious religion or another, or we take it outside of religion. What matters is that we're very clear on our human, on the good in our humanity and our luminous spiritual essence weaved in together. That's when we stand as a lighthouse. And then we can reflect that back. And I think I know so many people like that, and I'm sure you do as well. And they're all over the world. And I just hope that more people will show up for their own essence and then be that luminous guidance, that lighthouse for the teens, the kids they meet on their way. And it doesn't matter if it's their parents or they're significant adults for them in any other way.
Yeah. Because if we mess up with the kids, we mess up society, I think.
Yeah. And we have
Yeah.
messed up with the kids. We messed up with society, but
Or we wouldn't
I
have the
have
kids going to
trust it can
schools
change.
doing the things they're doing, you know? And everybody's like, oh, gun control or mental health or this and that. And I was like, we got to be figuring this out. How we
Yeah.
can reach kids that feel they don't have anybody to talk to when they're having these thoughts. Because there's got to be somewhere that's safe that they can go when
Yeah.
they
And it
have.
starts one by one. You know, you're doing it in the way that you walk life. I'm doing it. So many people that um I meet so many people that you just reflect that thought to them, and they can suddenly embrace that love that they are, that we may have experienced in a near death experience, but it's true for everyone. So, and ripples one by one, one by one. So I trust that humanity can do this. In shamanic terms, we often talk about dreaming a world into being, you know, where you put your energy. And that's my dream, especially in the region, geographical area I live in. Dreaming a world where all kids can play and have a safe roof above their head. And it doesn't matter what religious they come from or what nation they come from, because they all deserve that equally.
You ever ask why me? Like, why did I come back? Why did I survive this crash? And I mean, it was a miracle, right? You're healing.
My healing is a whole miracle. My state, I'm able to do almost everything. Never asked, just um, again and again grateful for being so guided and having such loving guidance and embrace in every moment of my life. My life today, my family life, is orchestrated in a way because it's not only me asking for guidance. It's my three daughters are connected. They're following their hearts. We listen, and it's a joyful, amazing journey. Sometimes challenging. I never imagined their lives could be like this. I don't ask why me. I just say thank you, and I'll show up for whatever you ask me to show up for.
And who are you talking to?
I'm talking to my luminous guidance. I will refer to that
Okay.
as a general term. You know, some people talk about angels, archangels, their essences, their various guidance. I'm talking to the guidance that
Okay.
is right for me, my highest guidance that I'm supposed to be working right now, which I recognize by frequency. And others talk, sometimes people talk to ancestors. Sometimes people talk to animals. Nature is guidance, as long as that's your guidance. And that's something people can only know for themselves. So,
I'm hearing something in my mind. Like I'm known by many names. I don't know where I'm getting that at. I don't know where that's coming from. It's just like I'm known by
because,
many names. Like,
yeah, you know, because each of these being beautiful, luminous beings guiding us, they're known by many names. And in New Age, we may call them this and that. And in Christianity, we may call them this and that. And that same essence can be called in another religion, in the Jewish tradition, in the Muslim tradition, in Buddhism, with a different name. But it's the same being.
Yeah, and I hear so many people say source. So who is that? Who do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from? Where's this intelligence come from? I don't know. Explain to me what your source is, you know? Because me, it's God. It's Jesus, this
So yeah,
angel, it's all that. I
I
know
would
who it
call,
is. And they say source, it's like,
yeah,
okay, that's your name. So
that's my name for what you refer to as God. Not necessarily God as Jesus, but God as something beyond Jesus, um, behind the Jewish God, behind the gods, behind those beings that have lived here and experienced human life. That piece that is just energy and is part of this creation that we are co-creating with each one of us in our little piece that we are in interaction with. But again, it has many names, and
I've
that's
got I've,
part of the beauty.
I've got to ask before we close. I've heard Egypt on the news every day, right? So you're there. What's it like? Are you?
I'm in Israel. We are
I'm
right
sorry,
now
I
in,
said Egypt. I'm going to say Israel.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Where'd
I'm in
that come
Israel.
from? Egypt.
Yeah, yeah, the last it's been over a year now that it's been very, very challenging here. From our side, from my very little piece, it's those people we know that were lost, that their houses were destroyed, that were kidnapped, and some of them came back, some of them haven't come back. Those personal connections that walk with us, and we pray for, and we do what we can, each of us. And it's the missiles constantly being sent from all over the place. You have like an alarm. Like today, we're recording this interview. It's a quiet 2 weeks because there is an agreement, and finally hostages coming back, and the people in Gaza able to go to their destroyed homes. It's so. Otherwise, I would have opened the interview and say, "Listen, there might be an alarm during our interview,"
Wow.
and that actually happened to me. When I have to. So sorry, I have to go. We close. This is our safe room. We are lucky to have a safe room. But when you look over at this big picture of what's going on here, ancient contracts, human confusion, both on the Israeli side and the Arab side, the Palestinians, the Hamas representing them, not representing and not wanting their good, sticking to old ways of power and war. Who has the last word? Fighting over land instead of looking into each other's eyes and seeing that we're all humans. And as humans, we all have the right to flourish, from the basic needs to bring our extraordinary abilities to life and sharing them with the world. And that's true for the Israelis, the Jewish ones, the Arab ones. There's a lot of Muslim Israelis and Christian Israelis and Jews. Israel is not just Jews. And that's true for the Palestinians and those living in the West Bank. And that's true for those living in Gaza. And some of them living in Jordan or in Syria or in Lebanon. That's true to everyone and everyone in the world. And I hold a dream, and I know it's possible because the Palestinians that I know are amazing people. Those I know personally. They're amazing people with amazing capabilities. And I hope that both we and them and they and we as one, because we separate, but we're not separated. We live in the same geographical area. We can stop fighting over land and over who is right and who is winning, because basically we all lost. We lost. They lost. We can, come with declarations of this, we won because that's bullshit. Sorry, I'm sorry for that word. It's we all lost. We all lost people that died. We all lost our sense of security. Many people lost their homes. Many people lost family members. That's all of us losing. And find new ways to embrace the kindness and our spirit and our humanity and our shared destiny to live here, because there's enough land for everyone to share, to live together. And I dream that. And I know that the political forces and the old paradigms are pulling somewhere else. But within me, I have a knowing that true peace, peace that is coming from one heart seeing another, is possible. So I'm sharing what's experience in a way, but also my perspective on it. I hold that dream, and a lot of people around me hold that dream, knowing that we need to learn to live together, and that living together shouldn't be so hard if we open our hearts.
Now, I think I heard you homeschool. Is that the norm there because of what's
No,
going on?
that is not the norm. It is allowed in Israel, which is not allowed in every country. I know in the US it is an option, but in Europe, not. A lot of people that I know, my clients, cannot homeschool. Yes, we shifted into homeschooling. Um, Homeschooling because it allows us to listen to what we need, and for each of my daughters to focus her time and attention on what she wants to develop, and not sit in a noisy class with teachers that had the best intentions. They were in a good school with good intentions and amazing kids, but it was noisy, crowded, confused. So yeah, we decided to homeschool. One of the best decisions we made as a family, as part of this journey of listening, of observing, of asking what would be the best setting now. And that may change in the months, because we constantly ask again and again and again, what are the conditions that our daughters need to be who they are, and to live every moment in joy. And I share a lot about that process in my book.
I don't know how you guys have a normal life with these missiles going off and this turmoil, and I guess you've gotten used to it.
You get used to things you shouldn't get used to. You get used to things you shouldn't get used to. And that means, there are days we can go out and be outside, and there are days we stayed home a lot. We stayed home a lot, and every school has safe spaces like that. Most schools, not every school, and not all, not everybody has them. It's like more of the more newer houses and buildings have those safe rooms, I think, for
Is there any sense of
activities.
hope since we got President Trump in, or no? Or no? Was it, I don't know.
I have hope, regardless of Trump or with Trump or without Trump. It's not about him. It's not about him, and it's definitely not about our leadership at the moment. I believe the human spirit. I believe that no matter what turmoil we're going through as humanity, and it's not happening only here, it's happening in many other places in the world, we have the power to choose love, kindness, seeing one another, instead of being afraid of one another and being afraid of other philosophies and other ideas. You don't have to embrace them, you don't have to accept them, but you can respect. I have trust because I see the kids coming to us, enormous souls, amazing luminous beings. And I hope and pray that we will be able to nourish them, to stay true to who they are, and be the leaders of our tomorrow. Because current leadership is a bit confused.
I
But
noticed
that's
here,
already an opinion.
I noticed here doing foster care. Okay, my boys were born in 1881, and what life was like for them, and then foster kids, just normal kids, and then like every 5, 10 years, I'm noticing it seemed to me, maybe just because I was getting older, maybe it was me that was changing. It seemed like the kids were just not caring. They are coming from these families just have no morals whatsoever and no sense of goodness or right or wrong, don't care who they hurt. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then, but now I'm looking in through the eyes of my grandchildren because I'm not working with those, troubled kids, behavior problems anymore. And I'm like, they're angels. They're
Exactly.
just angels. The kids
Yes.
today, it just seems so angelic.
And that gives hope.
Hmm.
And kids like that are born everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere, even in places like Israel and like Gaza, which, well, they're going through hard times. And it doesn't matter if it's the Hamas that they chose and the Hamas that led them. They're human beings and they're kids. Just like the Israeli kids, just above the line of the border, it's like it's so close that you can't believe it's like it's kilometers of space between one village and another village. These are kids and these are kids. There's no different in their rights, their human rights.
Yeah, and it's up to us adults to make sure that they have a future
Yeah,
that they can feel safe in.
exactly. And that angelic essence that you experience in your grandchildren and in so many kids around the world can be nurtured so that they can walk and create a ripple around them.
Keep them
And
angelic,
bring,
you know?
yeah, yeah, and bring that healing to the vast confusion that is inviting choice. It's confusion that is inviting us to choose what we believe in, choose how we want to
Yeah.
walk.
I just wish we could get rid of the violent video games, the violent movies, all this violence everywhere. Like make a law against violence because
That would be a blessing. Yeah,
so many that are doing these horrible violent things were very involved in that form of entertainment.
yeah,
It's like we shouldn't even be having this as entertainment.
I agree. I agree
So
with that. That's
just keep
not
them angelic
good.
because they come as angels. And what I call heaven, I feel these babies come straight from heaven and they're put on earth. And in my 5-year-old NDE, I was told God sends children here to be loved. That's why he sends them here.
And to
And
remind
so,
us that that's what we are.
yeah, we're sent here to be loved, not a lot of this stuff that's going on. So, well, I really appreciate you being a guest and your time. It's
Thank
been
you for
very
having me. This
interesting.
was an inspiring conversation. It was. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll get this sent out to you and you'll get it later today. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.